Well, greetings, friends, and welcome to the Gospel Underground Podcast. This is episode 166, Life, Storms, and Firm Foundations. I am broadcasting live. Well, live for me from the worldwide shed quarters here in Blacksburg, Virginia. Man, it's good to be with you guys after, what's been just an incredible few weeks. And, I want to say this first and foremost. I feel like we owe our listeners a little bit of an apology. Obviously, we've been podcasting since 2017. August made 7 years. This is our 166th episode, and we just love doing it. And sometimes life gets a little crazy with family schedules and ministry schedules and life schedules, and we just get a little delayed on some episodes, and we can't follow through with schedules as we intend. In fact, even today, I'm running solo on this one because Jesse's a little under the weather, so please pray for him. So anyway, we are about done with our answer series. We're looking at cultural issues, cultural apologetics. In our last episode, My Guy AI, where we looked at artificial intelligence, we have another one coming. We're going to call Free Guy. We're going to look at something called simulationalism and something other kind of techno weird. It should be fun. And then we look heading towards something we're calling the image of God revisited, looking at what human beings are, what is male, female, what is gender, some things related to masculinity and culture. And that'll take us through this coming year. But today, I wanted to just take a few minutes to share a little bit about what's been going on in our lives. Some of you who follow us on social media may be up to date on this, but this episode is called Life, Storms, and Firm Foundations for a reason. I've been involved with disaster recovery, serving, volunteering in that world. 2005, I led a young adult ministry in Nashville Metro down to the Gulf Coast in recovery efforts with Hurricane Katrina. Certainly in 2010 with Superstorm Sandy that hit the northeastern United States, New York City Metro, where we lived, both worked in recovery efforts on the Jersey Shore and Staten Island. Wonderful memories, actually, of serving together with dear brothers and sisters in the Lord from Jacob's Well. Shout out Jacob's Well. But when things like this visit your own folk, your own people, it just sort of hits different. I mean, our saga with Hurricane Helene began 3 weeks ago when I was in Florida, actually Fort Myers, Florida. Shout out the Summit Church, teaching some of their leaders. We're going to be teaching cultural apologetics with them over the course of this year, once a month, Lord willing. And I was having lunch with two of my friends after teaching, Justin Valacat and James Stenziano, pastors there at the Summit. And we began to keep, following the forecast. My flights home began to get delayed. And they're saying, hey, these flights are all going to get canceled. Tomorrow, this thing's coming in. You need to just keep your rental car and drive home. So I drove home, took, a 13-hour drive, took about 16, 17 hours through tropical storms, kind of rain the whole way. And then the following day, which was a Friday, we started getting texts from Casey's parents, Terry and Diana Monroe. I don't want to share too much details, in terms of their own private lives, but they live on the New River in Ashe County, North Carolina, Lansing, North Carolina, to be precise. And it just throughout the day, it kept getting, oh wow, the water's up higher and higher. And we've seen the water come up on the New River before, but nothing like this. They had a storm front come through the day before the hurricane, I think dropped close to 12 inches. They were already at flood stage. And then, of course, the hurricane drove right over the top of western North Carolina. And certainly some areas got close to 30 inches in a short amount of time. And the amount of water, I never thought in a million years the water would get to their house. They're set up on a hill. They built wisely and smart, but it was just insane what we saw. We lost contact with them for almost 2 days until they could get out and get to someone who could call us, let us know how they were doing. But, long story short, they had 10 feet of water in their first floor. They were actually down there with a shop vac vacuuming water when the steel door just bent in half, popped open because the waters were up very high and they didn't know it. And by God's grace, they got out because they were Nana up to her waist when got to the stairs, and then my father-in-law Terry up to his chest in water. And Certainly by that time, furniture was falling all over the place and banging everywhere, and quite the story. And they ended up being okay. They climbed up the hillside and sat in the middle of the night for a season until the water started going down. And then Swiftwater Rescue got Nana out, and my father-in-law, whom I just love so much, I love both of them so much, he decided to stay because the kind of guy he is, I'd love to get him on the podcast for an Underground Saints segment, tell his story a little bit. He's probably not the type that would want to do that. I'd probably have to persuade him, but they're retired there. They live there full time. They've been there since 2015. And, Terry's first words to me were when the floods got really bad, he saw 25 truckloads of firewood that he and some guys that have a ministry to the Appalachian Poor during the winters. His comment was, about the firewood floating away, and, the people need that to heat their homes through the winter. I mean, just a phenomenal guy, retired working for Ashe County Habitat for Humanity. He's actually done disaster relief with the Baptists, multiple storms, knows exactly what to do. So he just didn't leave, and they had parked his buddy's Bobcat, which is like a small bulldozer, basically, for those who aren't familiar. They had parked it up the hill, and so they spent 2 whole days chainsawing trees, cutting and rebuilt a road. And then Tommy and I were honored to go down and basically muck out the bottom floor, all the furniture, all the carpet, all the drywall. Thankfully, the next day we had 3 friends, Noah, Jesse, and Don, join us. Donnie, thank you guys so much. Join us to finish that kind of emptying of the basement. And it's just been nonstop work. So we're thankful to God that they're safe. And now they're, trying to get a new HVAC unit. All their, heating and cooling stuff was on that bottom floor, the units that run everything. And so they're working hard to get a replacement in before it gets too cold. So anyway, it just has me thinking again, because many times in times of tragedy or difficulty, natural disasters, old school language, acts of God, things that you're not able to control, right? It can bring up theological questions that I think are absolutely just essential and important to life. I mean, because to be really honest, being down there, you kind of see and hearing stories from the continued recovery. Casey went down with multiple friends. Thank you guys from Blacksburg. You know who you are, who went down with her as well. Just hearing from everybody. In times like this of intense trial, it's almost like there's a magnifying glass placed upon humanity. And you literally, stories out of Western North Carolina, what's true, what's not true. We know what we saw, what we engaged with in person in multiple areas, driving in and out multiple times. And so what you see is some of the most beautiful, loving, good, brotherhood, family, humanity coming together, right, to help and serve each one another in recovery. I know that's what we've seen down there, is that multiple people just showing up to help, showing up to serve. And I just so grateful to God that my in-laws, who are just mom and dad to me, are wonderful people that serve everybody. And to see people show up to help them so much was just tremendously beautiful to us. But at the same time, folks pulling up on four-wheelers with water and gasoline for generators just to help. They certainly were packing firearms because there were people robbing and looting and doing all sorts of wickedness, as well in the midst of this kind of situation of humanity. And I do think this is what you see, right, in these times. You see the best and the worst of all of us. And you certainly, I certainly have questions or thoughts about spiritual things or about God. Obviously, depending on what you believe about God, going into something like that will either be a firm foundation for you in it or maybe sinking sand as you face these kinds of challenges in life. And I wanted to start today, and this won't be a long episode, guys, but I do hope it will be of interest and certainly encouraging to you. I want to start with the words of Jesus of Nazareth himself. Jesus, who is called the Christ, the Son of the living God, actually takes storms, right, and uses them to teach us in his own instruction to us in the Gospels. This is in Matthew chapter 7. This is at the end of what is probably Jesus' most famous teaching. It's called the Sermon on the Mount. It seems to be a body of teaching that he probably spoke on multiple occasions that was key to instructing us on what the nature of God is, the nature of people living in his kingdom, what it looks like. And this is at the conclusion of that, where he teaches what makes a person blessed, what is the good life, how do we handle both spirituality, helping others, how do we go about that? And he ends with this statement in Matthew chapter 7. He says, "Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them," some translation says puts them into practice, "is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock." This is a firm foundation, right? The old hymn, "On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand," is really probably based on this exact teaching. Matthew 7:26, "And everyone who hears these words of mine, hears the teaching of Jesus, and does not do them, will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it." What are the implications of this teaching? First of all, storms exist in this world, and they exist outside of the beauty of the original creation in the Garden of Eden. Storms and the tumult and the death and chaos caused are part of the brokenness of this world, part of the curse. We see this in creation. We see both design and kind of brokenness, or technical terms, teleology and dysteleology, beauty and barbed wire, to borrow a phrase from John Lennox, the Oxford mathematician and Christian apologist. We see this beauty in barbed wire. We see it in the recovery efforts, right? We see both. So first of all, storms exist in this present world of brokenness, right? Secondly, storms are also exists as a means of grace to us. In other words, they bring water to drink, they help food to grow, and they help us in the struggle to live, right, in life here under the sun. And so one hurricane is a disaster for someone living in coastal lands. It could be an answered prayer to a farmer in the internal country who is responsible for growing food for vast quantities of people. This mystery, right, is that this weather system is both beautiful provision for us, but also very dangerous, obviously. Certainly storms can be used as a sign of God's judgment. I'm not saying every storm is, certainly it's not, but certainly calamity brought on by these things can be used by God to bring judgment. This is in Job 27. But we also know God causes, New Testament, rain to fall on the evil and the good, right? So the purposes of this could be judgment for some and then blessing for others. And then certainly God could be using the struggle of difficulty in our lives. Now, this is the weird thing for me when you just step back from looking at creation and all the things around us, that storms exist because God chose to make them and use them in human life, right? In fact, think about this. Jesus, God become flesh, God incarnate, is teaching his people to build their foundation in life on the teachings of the Son of God. And to do that, to teach them the seriousness of it, he's going to use something of creation to teach this lesson to them. And he's going to use storms, floods, and winds and rains. And so this presumes, right, that Jesus, taking up these things in order to teach us, intended these things in some way to be part of this current life and to teach us, hey, let us be humble. We don't control all things. We are not God. To strengthen us, right? To trust God in the midst of the storm is tremendous. And then certainly to teach us what is the foundation of our lives. One of the things I've seen over and over in Western North Carolina is that those who are part of a local church family or have an extended community, particularly of believers, have been well taken care of because they took care of each other in this storm. To be isolated as a human being and dependent on, say, outside bureaucracies to help is kind of a precarious situation. And certainly building our lives on what matters most is tremendously important. Think about this. This is Psalm 69 in the Old Testament. And the subtitle on this is not part of the Hebrew Bible, but it's a something that we've added in to outline and call this psalm. It says, "Save me, O God." And it begins this way. This is Psalm 69, 1 through 3. "Save me, O God, for when the waters have come up to my neck." And I'm literally thinking about our parents, right, in this situation. "I sink deep in mire where there is no foothold. I have come into deep waters, and the flood sweeps over me. I am weary with crying out. My throat is parched. My eyes grow dim for waiting for my God." Here you have someone who's in the midst of this kind of calamity, represented by floods and deep waters and storms and mire and in this condition, right? Crying out to God for help. And at the end of Psalm 69, we read a prayer. This is 14 through 16. "Deliver me from sinking in the mire." You ever felt like that in life, just in general, that you're sinking? Here's a prayer to God for deliverance, salvation from that. "Let me be delivered from my enemies and from the deep waters. Let not the flood sweep over me, or the deep swallow me up, or the pit close its mouth over me. Answer me, O Lord, for your steadfast love," this is God's promise-making, covenant-keeping love, right, to his people, "is good. And according to your abundant mercy, turn to me." You see, guys, especially in light of our condition as human beings, that we can forget, right? In America, we have money, we have insurance sometimes, we have, we think, the government will bail us out, we'll take care of all our needs. We don't have when your life hangs by a thread, or when you're in great difficulty, which all of us do, right? We are all heading towards a sure future where this present life in this age will end, right? He's crying out for God's abundant mercy to turn to him. Why? When God's face shines upon us, we have everything we need, whether life is easy, whether life is hard, whether we're recovering from a storm, whether we perished in one. We need something much more sturdy as the firm foundation of our lives. Now, there was an ancient philosopher and theologian named Augustine. Some people say Augustine. The Augustine scholars will tell you what's correct and what's not there. But he had a Latin phrase that a lot of ancient philosophers rescued with, and they used the term "sunum bonum," which means the supreme good. What is the best good, the goodest good? What is the best thing for people? What do we need the most? And this was in a philosophical essay. St. Augustine wrestled with this. He goes, well, what is the best thing for us? Could it be money? Could it be our health? Could it be lands, possessions, family? He said, no, all that stuff could be easily lost and is easily lost. Even your own life will be lost. And so he derived through philosophical reasoning that the best thing for us, we must be able to both possess it, have it, and love it, and not have it taken away from us against our will. Because that kind of thing is the firm foundation of life. That kind of thing is the most secure. That kind of treasure that you can love and possess, you can never lose it, it's eternal, is what's best for us, what we want the most. And it's not a new television set or a new car or a good retirement or even being able to pay the bills next month, right? As we struggle to do many times. He said the best thing has to be an eternal thing. And he reasoned that it was relationship with God and having God's truth to guide and base our lives on. This relationship with the Creator is the firm foundation that we need. This kind of ground we call is solid ground. The solid ground is eternal. The Apostle Paul knew this. This is 2 Corinthians 4. 2 Corinthians 4 and 5, two of my favorite chapters in the Bible. He says, so we do not lose heart. Man, you face some trials, some difficulties, a storm. You lose all your possessions in a flood, man. It's easy to lose heart, become discouraged, downtrodden. But if you know God in it, this is a conclusion that the apostle says, we do not lose heart, though the outer self is wasting away. We're all dying. The inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light and momentary affliction, whatever we're facing today, right, is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. So no matter how difficult today, the worst thing, and this guy who's writing this went through the worst of kind of stuff, prison, beat to death, eventually killed for his faith. I mean, just can't imagine difficulties he's faced. He said, this is achieving an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. And then he said, what is our vision then? What do we focus on? What do we think is most important? He said, as we look to the things, we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, temporary. They're just passing through. But the things that are unseen are eternal. You want your life to have a firm foundation, friends. You must build it on eternal things. Jesus said, listen to me, hear my words, follow me, put them into play in your life, and you will have a firm foundation through every storm. Why? Because in the midst of everything, the abundant blessing that may come your way, you will live in gratitude and not arrogance because of that. You will not think you're better because you have more money than people, or that you're better looking, or all these stupid things that we base life upon, right? If you base on eternal things, you will not become proud and arrogant, declare you don't need God in the midst of blessing and abundance, and at the same time, in the time of calamity, in the valley of the shadow of death, as the psalmist said, Psalm 23, we will fear no evil. Why? For thou art with me. You're with me, God. Your presence is with me. I have everything I need. And so knowing before a storm hits life, knowing, believing, trusting, putting our feet upon the truth of the gospel is everything in the midst of the flood. When the mighty waters come in, they would have swept over us and swallowed us alive, but God, right? This is Psalm 29, 10 and 11, and I want to end with this. It says this: the Lord sits enthroned over the flood. The Lord sits enthroned as king forever. May the Lord give strength to his people. May the Lord bless his people with peace. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your prayers for our family. Thank you for all you mean to us. The Gospel Underground is produced in partnership with the Bonhoeffer House. Review us on iTunes. We love 5-star reviews. Send your comments, feedback, questions that you might want us to take up to info@gospelunderground.org. We are a dialogue taking place in the borderlands between the church and culture, amidst the beauty and the barbed wire, the storm and the peace of God. And we hope to see you out there. Thanks. Peace.